Welcome to 5-Star Company Culture with your host, Josh Cunningham. In this podcast, we explore how culture is the key to unlocking massive profits and unprecedented freedom. Discover insights, strategies, and inspiring stories to transform your life and business. Here's your host, Josh Cunningham.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of our 5-Star Company Culture podcast. I'm your host, Josh Cunningham. Got another special guest for you today. Joining us from Salt Lake City, Utah, we have Brian Charlesworth. How's it going, Brian?
Great, Josh. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for being here, man. We've known each other for quite some time. We were just talking offline. It's been almost 9 years ago since we had the pleasure to meet each other. We share a unique relationship in the fact that my first client that ever had to start my business, rokrbox, is actually your wife. And so over the years, we've gotten to connect and really collaborate and talk a lot about real estate and entrepreneurship. And you've built a phenomenal company over the last almost decade now called Sisu. And so before I steal all your accolades away from you, I'm going to give you the stage and allow yourself to introduce you to our audience here, talk a little bit about your business experiences and your entrepreneurial journey. So take it away, Brian.
Yeah, happy to just share a little bit of background. I've, back when I was in my 20s, it wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur back then. You hear Gary Vee talk about that. Like, it wasn't cool. Like, people are like, well, what company are you going to work for? You're going to spend 20 years there? Like, that was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to spend 20 years at one company. So anyway, when I was in college and when I got out of college, I worked for Sprint, and then I worked for MCI. Depending on how old you are, you may not know who MCI is. Do you know who MCI is?
I do remember. Wasn't that the pen drop commercial?
Yes.
Yeah. There we go.
Well, so MCI was, they became MCI WorldCom, but they were the backbone to the internet, they and AT&T, when the internet first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were selling data and we were teaching people how to use the internet. And actually back then we were actually teaching people how to use email,
Nice.
Believe it or not. So if that's a sign of my age, I guess it is. But anyway, that's kind of where I got started, and I was super passionate about it, but fell in love with the internet and went and started my own data company and telecom resale company. I was the first dealer of Nextel in Utah, Nevada. And went and started that company, sold it about 18 months later. And then after that, I started the first voice internet company, which is, when I say that, most people think of voice over IP, but what that actually is like Siri, Alexa, and Google, the stuff you do to say, hey, Siri, what are the movie show times? Or, give me directions, or what's the weather, or all that kind of stuff. We were doing that kind of stuff 20 years ago in the wireless networks. So we allowed 3G services in the 2G networks back then. And pretty much every wireless company was our customer. And then after I sold that company, I started an investment firm where we just invested in and bought franchisors. And so I spent 8 years, almost a decade, buying franchises, growing them. Companies like Housemaster, I tried to buy Budget Blinds, partnered with them instead, and we acquired 3 businesses underneath them. And then after that all happened, and we sold those businesses, Spring asked me to join and help her grow her real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about a year and a half. And during that time frame, I realized the need in this industry for Sisu. The most fun I'd ever had was not building other people's businesses, which I did when I was in franchising. The most fun I'd ever had was when I was building technology companies. And so I saw an opportunity to build a company, which is called Sisu, which is what I'm building now, which is really changing the real estate industry in my opinion, will change it for decades to come. We are having a massive, massive impact on the whole transaction process in real estate. So that's what I'm doing now. That's kind of my history.
That's awesome. And most entrepreneurial journeys I love begin with finding a problem and figuring out how to solve it, and then massively scaling it and selling it. So that's similar to the start of rokrbox. We were I was working with Spring, and she had an issue with her internet lead conversion. And I knew that not only did she share that problem, but many other agents across the country did. And I saw that problem and seized the opportunity and have built an incredible business around it. And you've essentially done the same thing on the technology side. And, Sisu is an incredible tool. Like you said, it's going to change the landscape of the real estate industry. But why don't you elaborate a little bit more on like exactly the problem that you identified and then how you sought out to solve that? Because we all have visions and we all have dreams, but it's a matter of actually taking action and making that dream a reality. So why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, the really cool thing is I got to see the problem, and I'll talk about that in a second. But even today, like everything we roll it out through her team first. So I've got this little like test hub right here in my own backyard. And at the time when I started with Spring, she had 5 agents, did maybe 100, 120 transactions a year. Now she has, it was 50 a little while ago, probably about 80 agents, got up to 90. It's ranging in that 80 to 90 range right now, but they're growing quickly. And she'll do over 1,000 transactions this year. So,
wow.
But I got to experience the problem because I jumped in to help her grow her team while I was figuring out my next thing. And instead that figured out my next thing for me. And what I saw was that nobody had really built what everyone had talked about, which is really an end-to-end platform, right? In real estate. Everyone had built CRMs, and a CRM in real estate is not what I think of a CRM as most CRMs in real estate are IDX websites and lead follow-up sites, lead follow-up platforms. They're really, really geared around those two things. When I think of a CRM, I think of Salesforce, which, Sisu solves a lot of the stuff that Salesforce does, like being able to put in all your goals, have dashboards, have your agent hold your team accountable, visualize things, right? All that kind of stuff. And then the most important thing we do is really streamline and automate your entire business. So when I say streamline, when I got into real estate, we were taking data and putting it, if someone would go under contract or we'd take a listing, someone would fill out a Google intake form. And then that Google intake form can't really go anywhere. It can't really do anything except for allow someone else to view it. So then a TC, a transaction coordinator, would take that information out of a Google intake form and move it into a whiteboard. Well, we got rid of whiteboards and we put Trello in there. And so they would take it out of there and they would move it into Trello. And then they would move it into a spreadsheet to do the commissions. And then they would do, and so everything was like goals were in the spreadsheet. So everything was spreadsheets, Monday, Trello, Asana. You have all these different platforms and intake forms, Google intake forms, Jot forms, Wufoo forms, you have smart sheets, like we were using all this stuff. And it was just super cumbersome and you didn't have real-time reporting and you were wasting a lot of time. There were no automations where, the emails that go out congratulating people that they're under contract, that should automatically happen. Just with the data being in the right place, you can set it up so that all that information just automatically goes out to all the right people when somebody goes under contract, right? So you're saving, when you start thinking about it, you're saving 30 minutes or so of an employee's time every time you do an automation. Well, over time, like if you're doing 1,000 transactions a year, like that's thousands and thousands of hours, which are probably a dozen employees that you're able to scale and grow your business without having to hire. You can keep your same team and grow and scale with that team versus having to just keep going through the nightmares of trying to grow a business without the right systems.
Yeah. So it was a very glaring problem. You had a really good idea and understanding of what the solution could be. So what has made your company different in being a purpose-driven organization and having values-based leadership that's allowed you guys to raise a ton of capital, to build this phenomenal product, and to continue to survive through, some of the upturns and downturns in the real estate space? What has been the keys to your success in that category?
Yeah, I think we had one advantage over a couple of advantages over everyone else in the real estate space. One is we just talked about it. I'm so close to my wife's team. I get to experience with them every day. I get to see what's going on. I think I'm closer to the industry than any other software leader in the space. because I'm so close to her team. I still coach her team leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Up until recently, coached some of her agents. Like I know I'm very, very close to the space. In addition to that, though, I think what really sets Sisu apart is we're a truly agile development company. A lot of the technology in real estate is older, and it came out before there was agile development, before, you could do releases every 2 weeks or every day or whatever it is. There are only a few companies in the real estate space or technology companies that actually develop in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real advantage for us. Like we're pushing new product at least every 2 weeks, which allows like I've had software companies in real estate who have hundreds of developers actually say to me, like, there's no way you can be putting out this much product. Like, there's no way that you have a great transaction management company or, because that's just a piece of what we do. And I said, no, it's not great. It's the best, right? It's the best. And it's just about managing the team that way. But I would say our biggest strength is our culture of our company. We have a culture of everybody wanting to grow. Everyone's passionate about what they're doing. Everyone has the right to make decisions. Not only the right, but I expect them to make decisions. Everyone is a leader at a different level. Like some people, even the people in our chatbot, they are leading our customers at certain levels. And based on the feedback they're getting from those customers, they can actually communicate. There's communication that goes down through the company. There's communication that comes up through the company. And they can communicate things that will actually have impacts on those customers, that will have an impact on the company based on them being frontline. So I think everybody plays a unique role. Not that, one role is necessarily more important than the other. It's everybody working on a cause, on a mission, and really knowing that they can have an impact on the business. I actually met with our team this morning, and somebody said, hey, it's really, really cool to know that I can actually have an impact on what's happening in this business.
Wow. Like
versus, being one of thousands of employees. We only have about 50 employees today. So, they're still having a massive impact on the company.
Yeah. And I think that's a common theme that we hear on this podcast is, business leaders, entrepreneurs talking about, the key to their success, not being a know-it-all, not being the genius with all the ideas, never making a mistake, but being able to create a team that together can accomplish more than they would individually. And I think it's very clear that you had that vision for the company to begin with. It's now created some sustainable competitive advantages. And like you said, it's creating a path for you to, really leave a lasting impression on the real estate community for quite some time. So I definitely commend you for that. That's, like I said, a very common theme that we hear on these podcast interviews.
The minute I think I know it all, that's when we're in trouble, right?
Yep.
Because the minute you think you know it all, you stop growing, you stop learning, you stop listening. And some of our best ideas come from our customers. Some of our best ideas come from our employees. Some of our best ideas on solving problems that we're having and facing challenges come from our team members that might be at lower levels, right? So I think the most important thing you can do as a leader is exactly the opposite of thinking you know everything, being willing to learn everything. The other thing that I think is important as a leader is knowing that I need to grow faster than my company grows. Meaning, personally, I need to grow faster than my company grows. Well, how can I do that? That requires a lot of learning, right?
Yep.
That requires a lot of coaching. That requires a lot of book reading. That requires a lot of growth internally for me to be able to outpace the growth of my company.
That's a really great way of putting it. I also love how Sisu in itself, the actual product that you created. So you've built a phenomenal company. You have values-based leadership. You have a purpose-driven organization, but the product itself actually creates the opportunity for real estate teams and professionals all across the country to create better standards and better accountability in their business as well. Why don't you elaborate on some of the impacts that you've seen that make on some of your clients by having a tool like Sisu to establish those standards and raise the level of competition internally?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Josh, because if you were to ask me what we actually do is we turn real estate agents who decide they want to build a team or a brokerage, we turn them into great leaders, right? Because they're not leaders, they're agents. When you're an agent, you're a salesperson. You're not a leader. Those are two different roles, right? Those are two different things. So in order for me to become a great leader, I absolutely on the sales side need to hold people accountable. And I need to hold them accountable, not to what I think they need to accomplish, but what they want to accomplish to achieve their personal goals in life. So if I can figure that out, what do they want to accomplish? Here's what they need to do to make that happen. And I can hold them accountable to that. Sisu empowers them to do that. On the operations side of their business, none of these people have run operations in a company before, right? So, but we give them all the tools that they need to streamline and automate all of their process. So everything is systematized. I remember Spring having a TC leave her very early on, Josh, back when I first met you. And like, she was so like frustrated and upset about it because it was going to require 60 to 90 days of her time to train another transaction coordinator, right? But if you have the right systems in place, you plug them in, they do their daily tasks. It's not a challenge at all. In fact, she has VAs doing most of that work today.
Yeah.
She had 3 transaction coordinators back then. Today, she has 1 transaction coordinator with 3 VAs supporting them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
So,
how would you, as someone who's been around since the beginning of the internet, you've bought and sold companies, you've helped, you partner with people to create, more value in the business. How would you quantify what a company culture means throughout that process, whether it's a strong company culture or a weak company culture? What have maybe been some of your experiences in seeing how that has come into play in buying, selling, increasing the value on businesses?
I would say probably the biggest weakness of anybody in life is being a great communicator. If you look at real estate agents, they don't communicate well to their clients, which in most cases that makes their client unhappy. Same thing with us as leaders of a business. If we don't communicate our vision with our team, if they don't understand the vision, if they don't understand this overarching why we are doing something, they're not going to make the right decisions in what they're doing. So it's so important as a leader that you communicate the overall vision so that even though, sometimes they may think this is the right thing to do, but we're not doing it because this is the vision, right? So if they can see the vision versus just that little box of work that they're in, it makes a massive difference in the business. So I think it's critical to constantly communicate the vision. The vision will constantly change. If you're an innovative company, the vision is constantly going to update. It's going to constantly change. It's going to constantly expand, if you will. And that vision needs to be communicated effectively with everyone in the organization. And I think that's probably the single most important thing you can do. And that's what creates passion. That's what creates great decision-making. And I would say, the moment the passion dies out in any company, that's when the company's in trouble, right? Can you keep your team passionate about what you guys are accomplishing as a company?
Yeah. And I think you already alluded to the fact that most of your team is virtual, and you're able to not just trust that people will follow the necessary instructions to get the job done, but that they believe in the mission, they believe in the values of the organization. So when it's that time where they don't have someone there standing right over their shoulder to answer their question, you can trust that they'll make the right decision that aligns with the vision of the company. I myself have a very similar experience. I started rokrbox back in 2013. And after just 4 years, decided I wanted to experience lifestyle in downtown San Diego. So while the operations were back in Texas, I had the freedom to move to San Diego and manage the business virtually because we had established a very strong company culture that I didn't have to be there every single day guiding every small decision, but we had this foundation of values that we lived by, and we had this vision for the company of where we wanted to go, that then you could empower your leaders to trust that they'll make those right decisions on a day in, day out basis. So I think
you also have systems and processes, right?
Certainly.
Like, doesn't matter where somebody is. We're on our development team, we're moving things from left to right? We have tickets and things are getting moved from here to here, and it's all about your production.
Mm-hmm.
With our customer success team, it's all about what are those response rates? How fast? I remember when we had an hour and 40-minute average response to chat, getting back to someone on chat.
Yeah.
And I remember having to challenge my team to get that under 5 minutes. No one thought it was possible. We did it. Then it was, okay, now how do we get it under 60 seconds, right? Now our average chat response time is less than 60 seconds. Wow. Now it's actually a chat, right? Somebody like me is not going to sit around and wait for 10 minutes or for hours for someone to get back and respond on chat, right?
Right.
So, but to your point, Josh, we have always been remote. We have an office that people can go into, but of our 55 employees, we have people in 14 different states.
Wow.
So, and that has nothing to do with COVID, honestly. Has everything to do with pre-COVID. That's how we ran the business, because for me, it's about productivity. Now, our sales team is pretty much all in Utah, because I think it's important that salespeople come together, and there's a lot you can do with the sales culture and, driving that excitement for people to be in one place. And they probably spend more time in our office than anyone else in the company. But, for me, it's not about how many hours you're in the office every day. It's about how productive you are.
Yeah.
And what I find is if you focus on productivity, you're usually going to get far more than 8 hours a day out of people. Like if they're passionate about what they're doing, I have team members that are up, 10 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock in, 12 o'clock a.m. Messaging me, working on things, sending stuff, focused on the business. So
fulfilling their purpose.
Yes.
I always like to say that the 3 keys to success are, you just elaborated on there, is having systems and processes, right? You've got to have predictable ways to generate consistent results, right? Something you can teach, something you can learn, something you can measure, you can improve. The second key is to have 5-star talent to actually drive those systems, right? You can't just throw a body at it. You got to actually find some people that, like you said, can fulfill their purpose in life by executing some of these systems. And then the third key, I bring it up last, but it really comes first. And that is to have a 5-star company culture, to have that foundation for the systems to always be improving. Just like you said, you had an hour chat time. It went down to 5 minutes. Now it's down to less than 60 seconds. That was an improvement of those systems because you had the right foundation of the culture in place. And then also the talent. I'm sure you've had people. I mean, I know some of your founding people are still with you. Not only are you attracting, but retaining top quality talent. But that culture is something that people have even left, culture rich organizations to join your organization because those values align. So got to have the right culture in place. Anyway, Brian, lots of golden nuggets here that you dropped today. I really appreciate your insights and your expertise that you were able to share with our audience. Any last thoughts or ideas on developing a 5-star company culture to unlock more profits and freedom in your life?
I read a book recently. I think it's called The 4 Obsessions of a Powerful Leader or something like that. Anyway, one of the things I got out of that book was who to hire in your company. And it looked for 3 things. It looked for humble, hungry, and smart. And in that particular order. First, very most important thing is that they are humble. That means they're open to feedback. They're not going to, if somebody comes after you with feedback, you're not going to get defensive, right? You're going to learn from it. And I invite everyone in my company to challenge me on anything I say, right? So humble, hungry, they have to have hunger, right? They have to have passion, drive. They have to want more. If you bring somebody in that's just here to get a paycheck, they're not the right person for your company. Not if you're building a company like my company anyway. So, and then smart, you want people who are smart and can learn and grow, but you don't want the smartest people in the room, because anyone that feels like they're the smartest person in the room, they've stopped learning. They think they're better. And they're not going to grow with your company either. So those are all three very important things. And I'll just leave you with that, because in the short time, I think I read that book 6 weeks ago, and I think about it all the time. Honestly.
Yeah. Another great example of growing faster than your organization, right? We've always got to be the student, constant, never-ending improvement. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Well, again, thanks for your time today, Brian. Thanks again to our listeners for tuning in today. Don't worry, we've got some more wonderful guests for you in the upcoming weeks, so stay tuned, and we'll learn more about developing a 5-star company culture. Thanks again.
Great to catch up with you, Josh.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you for tuning in to 5-Star Company Culture with Josh Cunningham. Embrace these lessons to elevate your business and join the ranks of thriving organizations. Stay tuned for more episodes. And until next time, remember, culture is the key to your success.